Hi, book club. I've been at school for a lot of my recordings. This is my office at home. So, we are going to talk about assessment. And assessment is probably like the Moby Dick for teachers. Like, we're always searching for the great white whale that we'll never catch. And that would be the perfect assessment that does everything we hope it does and has a rubric that truly reflects everything that our students can do. So, as we approach book club, I would just like to tell you how I assess a reader and hopefully encourage you along your way of assessment through a reader. So, first off, everybody's assessment looks different because we all teach in different contexts. So I can't tell you what I do and say this is what you should do because you have your own administration, you have your own evaluation process at your school, and you have your own expectations in the grade book. I'm sure some of you are doing standards-based grading, and some of you are doing grading where you have to have a certain number of things in each category. And some of you have a department that demands that you count participation, and some of you are in schools where no homework is allowed. And so when you think about the number of teachers that might watch an assessment video, you have to think that every one of them has a little bit different twist on what's expected for them in their school about assessment. I am lucky because I have full control over the things that I do, with the exception of I do have to give a final exam both semesters because my students in level 3 and 4, because my students are getting dual credit. But other than that, completely free to do whatever I want to within the classroom. So as I read a reader, I if I'm in Oprah's book club and I am reading a reader and somebody's going to stop me after every chapter and have me take a quiz, I'm not going to get super into that book. Like, part of reading is being in the flow of reading a story. And I really think and I really encourage teachers to read as much as fast as you can, as many days in a row as you can, as far as the student's stamina goes on reading. In my classroom, we don't read on Thursdays. On Thursdays in level 3 and 4 and 2, we watch a show called El Internado Laguna Negra. That's just like our pause. We always do that. We watch, we pause, we discuss what's happening in the show because it's in Spanish with Spanish subtitles. So it requires not a movie talk exactly, but definitely some discussion as we watch along. So you can hear my dogs, I'm sure, clacking around. Stop. Uh, so assessment, though, in my classroom comes at the end of the reader, and I try to read all the way through as quickly as I can to keep them in flow, keep them involved in the story, keep them loving what they're reading. I would say if you have to have a grade in the grade book for every day, when I'm reading a reader, we do a chapter and then we do a follow-up. Usually that's gamified because if I give them a worksheet, I don't get the opportunity to add any more input into that. They just read the questions on the worksheet, they answer it. If I gamify the way that we do the follow up, then every time I ask a question, I can be saying, is it this or this? Why did you think this? No, it was this, and this is why. So all of those things are extra input and revisiting the story a little bit at the end of that chapter. I have little dachshunds, and their toenails are very clicky on this floor. So I don't do that, but we did try to include a lot of, if the game allowed, if the game had questions, we tried to allow for teachers to have a worksheet that you could give to get kind of a formative assessment grade. I would encourage you during a reading, if you have to assess, or if you have to give a homework, or if you have to give some kind of a written follow-up, make it a formative grade. It's really a formative assessment is to help drive us toward is this book the right thing for my students at the place that they are right now? Is this book, easy for them to understand, or are they struggling to understand? If they're struggling to understand, then it may not be the right choice of reader at the right time for them. And so formative assessments let us see that pretty quickly. But also the gamified ones are way more fun, and way more connecting between you and the students to get to play those. So hopefully you'll be able to do that. If you look at it, it is a 2-week window overall. So even if you don't assess anything until the very end, we did include an assessment, and so hopefully that will be sufficient. At the end, you have choices. We gave you a traditional assessment. If you're in a traditional department that's using textbooks and that's geared toward, identify these words and identify these verb forms, then our traditional assessment is probably going to be the best choice for you. And if you are a teacher within a department that's very traditional, that's kind of trying out a reader for the first time, sometimes it can be a great bridge into more comprehension-based assessments to start out with a reader and something that's very familiar and a topic students can really talk about, and then move on to trying to, change up the types of assessments that you do. We also included more of a comprehension based assessment. So they're going to be doing the four skills: listening, reading, writing, speaking. The world is built on story. As humans, we learn through stories that our family tells us. We learn through fairy tales, and we learn through our parents reading books to us. And we read fiction and we read nonfiction and we read classroom textbooks. Like, we have acquired the knowledge that we have through story. And so it is a natural thing to expect that students would also acquire language through story, because narrative drives what we do. When someone says, "How are you?" you say, "I'm fine," or "I'm not doing very well because," and then you start a narrative. So teaching our students to narrate, teaching them to retell stories and then to tell their own stories is a powerful way to build their proficiency level up. The cool thing about a reader is then you have lots of days. Inside this text, there's a story that they're going to connect with, not just over 1 or 2 or 3 days. There's 7 chapters in the book. You've got some review time, some retell time. So, really, 8 or 9 days of just really connecting with the meat and the material of this story gives them a ton to be able to say back to you. So when you think about what students can say at the end of a shorter unit versus what they can say at the end of a longer unit, it's a big deal. So I would say give the comprehension-based test if at all possible. And if it is not possible for you to give all facets of it, have them do a twist of some kind on retelling the story. They can retell just the details of the story. They could retell you their favorite part of the story. If you want to kind of vary or differentiate for different students, you could say, do just a retell, a basic retell of the story, and you can earn just like the solid B if you do a good job retelling the story. If you'll retell your favorite part of the story in as much detail as possible, where, maybe they're producing a whole lot of language, but just specifically describing one part, that is different. A 7 chapter book, if they write, even if they write a whole front of a page about it, they've not given a ton of detail about each of the chapters. If they write a front of a page about one part of the story, now they've given a whole lot of detail about one thing. And so that is a more advanced skill to be able to describe in detail and to pick out, ways to maybe interject their own opinion or their own thoughts. Compare and contrast this story with another story that you know. Or tell me about who your favorite character was and why. Now they have to support, like give an opinion and then support and defend the opinion that they've given you. So there are a lot of different ways to approach assessment. Actually, with that idea of differentiation, if you have struggling students who really struggle to put series of simple sentences together, tell them that they can do a bulleted list of 12 sentences. It's going to be the B minus or C plus, depending on how well they do it. But that gives everybody a little ledge to cling on to. Oh, I can easily make sentences about it. I feel so scared that I can't retell a story, but I could make sentences. The next time, I like to use an easy feedback rubric. I have them in my store on TPT for free. They're called the Easy Feedback Rubric Pack at Somewhere to Share on TPT. I love these things because I give them a goal. In level one, we're shooting to have every unit be novice high at the end. A lot of kids get beyond novice high when they have, not at the start of a unit, but if they've read a whole story, they can easily put together sentences into paragraph form. So that would be, performing at kind of an intermediate low level. So I like giving them that novice high goal. And then if they choose to write the simple sentences in bulleted form, that's kind of a novice mid thing, to not string them together very much. Um, Unless their sentences are really beautiful, novice highs can do simple sentences. So maybe those novice highs, maybe they met the goal with those sentences if they're detailed and nice. And then intermediate low if they put them together in paragraphs. With the easy feedback rubric, the center gives the kind of ACTFL proficiency descriptor benchmarks at novice high. And I have the space in not intermediate low to write, hey, you wrote bulleted sentences, but they were really well done. You did great detail. You had vocabulary from the story. You added but or and or then, and you could have put these easily into a paragraph. So next time, let's try that. Or on the other hand, I could praise them in that intermediate low category and say, you put these all together in a paragraph. They look so great. Next time, I would just love to see you add a couple of transition words. So it gives me a little place. So the easy feedback rubric, I should have described this to you before. The easy feedback rubric has three columns. The center column has their goal and it has the proficiency descriptors directly from the ACTFL ones. On the let's see, on my rubric, on the right-hand side of the target, there's a place for me to write if they did above what they were asked to do. And then on the left-hand side, there's a place for me to write if they were a little below. So I can write them notes. This kind of feedback is so much more valuable than just saying all of the things they did wrong. If we start correcting every single mistake that they make, we are giving up our evenings. We've talked about this in earlier videos here. We are teachers. We don't have enough time to give up our evenings grading every single mistake because they go, oh, and throw it in the recycling bin. So we want to cut our grading time down, but also offer feedback in a way that's going to yield student generated repair on the next production. So we want to give them a helpful feedback. Hey, I noticed that you said Shirley's mom, Shirley's mama, a bunch of times. Remember, we don't use apostrophe S in Spanish. It's la mamá de Shirley. Something that's actionable that they can work on for the next time. So I really like using those when my students are speaking. So if you do decide to give a little speaking component, because we know that the data shows that the national average after 4 language study years is still intermediate low, intermediate mid border, like putting together a series of simple sentences. It's very low. Like production and especially spoken production comes last. If I'm asking my students to speak about a topic and I say, record me a little video for a minute and a half, retelling me the story, telling me about some of the characters and what you liked or disliked about them, something like that. If they talk for 90 seconds, that is way better than series of simple sentences. That is a lot of sentences they've strung together. So I'm going to just give them full credit. If somebody's, don't get me wrong, I'm not just giving everybody a blanket A plus. If somebody doesn't do it, that's a zero. That is a behavioral thing. They have chosen to not do it. Um, I have had students who had IEPs and students who didn't, who were selective mute, that didn't talk, like never spoke a word inside the classroom. And so sometimes they would not turn these in. So sometimes it's not behavioral, sometimes it's situational. But that's an assignment that you have to. Now, that also, if they have an IEP, then you would need to offer them an alternative to be able to write it only and not speak. Um, it's okay. It'll all be okay in the end. If they never ever speak a word in your class, the chances of them going out into the world and, wanting to teach Spanish or to, stand in front of a crowd and give a speech in Spanish are very, very slim. So it is okay that they, pass kind of on speaking because of a social issue that they have. No problem. Let them do that. The joy that they get in our classroom, we don't want to squelch that. We want them to keep coming back. These kids will stay for 4 years, even though they never, ever, ever say a word in Spanish because they love the stuff that you're doing in class and because you honor how they feel about that. But that's not everybody. Those are very special cases and they're very rare. Most kids will absolutely speak if they don't feel like they're the center of attention in the classroom. And so having them maybe record for me on their iPads, we have one-to-one iPads at my school, which I know is a blessing and a luxury. We record our videos and I can watch them later. Super easy, a minute and a half a piece. I'm going to be doing this just with my level twos, and I only have 26 level twos next semester. So it'll be, maybe an hour of grading those for me because, like I said, I'm not grading for errors. They're going to make mistakes. These level twos are glorified novice highs. They're intermediate lows who are just making, simple series of sentences. But if you look really closely at the ACTFL descriptors, native speakers who are accustomed to language learners often have to ask for clarification or repetition. So they are not going to be perfect, and that's okay. That's developmentally the mess that they are as intermediates, and we just love them in the intermediate mess. And by level four, it all starts to come out all right. So don't stress. That's my biggest takeaway. Don't stress about the evaluation. Do what you have to do. If your department wants you to break down some kind of a grammar point from El Espíritu de Xolotl, that is fine. There's tons of present tense in here. We've exposed them to some past tense in here. If you're reading this because you only teach upper levels and you're going for an easy read with some higher level discussion topics, awesome. There's even things like subjunctive and command forms that you could harvest out of here and make them kind of your grammar focus if you need that. What you just need to remember is that assessment is going to depend on your context. And so you're welcome to take what we have provided for you. You're welcome to make your own. We would encourage you to, if you are on Facebook and you are in the El Espíritu de Xolotl Facebook collab group, we would love to have you in there and we would love to talk to you about ideas that we have together. Sometimes when you're in a particular situation that you're not quite sure what you should do, a group of teachers who, you might be able to find somebody that's been in a similar situation. So we would love to help. It was great to talk to you again. I hope that this video didn't turn out too long. I figure I always, when I get talking about assessment, I get really excited because that's like my number one favorite thing to talk about. So I will see you in the Xoli Book Club, and it was great to meet you.